Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we will be covering our topic number 3, value creation for innovative companies. So let's start by giving you some nice light on where, if you're very successful, your company will end up with. You can see the valuation of very successful technology companies. And these companies started from nothing and usually receive some form of equity investments, either business angels, venture capital, or private equity. In the top, you can see Facebook or Alibaba. These companies are worth around 400, $500 billion. In the second range, you have companies such as Uber, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, which was acquired by Facebook. It is important to understand these are technology companies that usually create value and therefore are evaluated in a different way compared to non-technology companies such as Coca-Cola. And so the question becomes, what determines the value of innovative companies? So it would be useful if you pause the video and think of what determines the value of Instagram or Snapchat, Tesla or Amazon, or for example, Impossible Burger or Beyond Meat. The last two are companies producing vegetarian meat. These companies will create value and be evaluated differently compared to other companies. Again, think about it before we discuss them in the next slides. So innovative startups create value in different ways. And so investors will look at them differently compared to non-tech companies such as Coca-Cola. A number of things are very important. So first, future is more important than the past. In some cases, there will not be any past. So if your company is 6 months old, there is not much to look at. If you're looking at Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola has been in business for 100 years, and so the past might be a predictor of the future, but for technology companies, this is usually not the case. Rule number 2, cash flow matter more than assets. Okay, so the cash that a company is able to generate, especially in the future, is more valuable, is more relevant than the type of assets that the company has, especially if you're looking at tangible assets. We'll see later on in the next slides the difference between intangible and tangible assets, but in general, cash matters more than assets, and intangible assets matter more than tangible assets. But let's give you a few examples. So I'd asked a few seconds ago how to evaluate, for example, a company such as Snapchat, how they create value. So Snapchat is a social network, some of you might be familiar, and is a company that is currently valued at $13 billion. And some of you might be surprised because you can see a screenshot I've taken here. This was on the 19th of March 2020. You can see here then in 2017, the net income, so the green line, is minus almost $4 billion. In 2018 is minus almost $2 billion, $1 billion, and is expected to keep losing money for the foreseeable future. So the question is, why is Snapchat so valuable? Why is it worth $13 billion? And the expectation is that Snapchat is losing money now, but in the future, maybe in 5 to 10 years, we start generating a significant cash inflow. The same way Facebook was doing a few years ago. Facebook, maybe 10 years ago, was not profitable, was losing billions of dollars, but along the way started to become profitable and now generate a significant amount of net income and cash flow every year. So the first rule is that the future cash flow, more than the past cash flow, or at least the expectation of cash flow, is what generates value or makes these companies, these tech companies, valuable. The same can also be said, let's say, for Tesla. Again, the future cash flow or the expectations of it is what makes Tesla valuable. Both in the case of Snapchat and Tesla, of course, we are not looking at one-year-old startups, but these are still very reasonably young and innovative companies, and we can learn from them also what applies to younger firms. Again, Tesla has been losing $4 billion cumulatively between 2017 and 2019. Is expected to earn $500 million in 2020. Of course, this might change in the next quarters if the virus situation worsens, but this is the current expectation. And just a few months ago, it was worth $120 billion. After the current market decline, is now worth $78 billion. This is 10 times the assets or the book value that Tesla owns. So what's the reason? Why is Tesla so valuable? Again, we can have a similar reasoning compared to Snapchat. Tesla maybe is not generating a lot of cash, a lot of profits now, but this cash is expected to increase significantly in the future. You can see here in 2022, we'll probably generate maybe 5 billion in profit. So this makes the 78 billion in market cap not so high. It's not only looking for 470 million today, but in a few years, this might increase a lot. And so the way to look at these companies is to do a discounted cash flow. So you need to look at 10, 20 years down the line, the type of cash that these companies will generate, and look at the future cash flow expectations and try to see whether they are valuable today looking at these assumptions. One of the reasons why Tesla is also very valuable is that because the industry in which Tesla is operating, so the electric vehicle market, is expected to grow significantly. So most of the startups are usually looking at markets that are expanding rapidly. And this means that not only Tesla will keep generating more and more revenues because there will be more experience and the customers will know their products more and more, but also the total addressable market of Tesla will increase. Now only probably 2-3% of the cars that are sold in developed economies are electric, but this expectation is that in 20, 30 years, all the cars will be electric and Tesla will be more and more successful. And this future expectation, this future industry growth makes Tesla successful and valuable today. There is a number of industries that these are just examples that are expected to grow. So if your startup is in one of these industries, but not only, there are many more industries that are going to be disrupted on a daily basis and will expand significantly in the future. If your startup is in one of these businesses, in these industries, it's probably more valuable. For example, Tesla is in the self-driving industries, in the electric vehicle industry, and these are strong industries where investors want to invest. Nanotechnology is another one, artificial intelligence, blockchain, DNA sequencing, meat substitutes. All of these industries are riding customer taste changes, technology changes, and these are expected to grow 10, 100 times more in the future compared to more established businesses, industries such as drinks or Coca-Cola industries that are more or less stable across the years. In some cases, you are only receiving more interest from your investors because these industries are just more fashionable. They might not grow as much, but there is a lot of fashion, there is excitement in the industry, and so your company might be more valuable just because of that. We have mentioned in the case of Tesla that intangibles such as the brand, for example, or the technology might be valuable. So what is the difference between tangible and intangible assets? So in the first case, you have 6 examples of tangible assets. So these are assets you can more or less touch with your hands. So you can touch cash, equipment, machinery, physical plants, properties like houses and inventory. So all these type of assets are material and you can touch and see them. And these are assets that are very relevant, for example, for airlines, transportation companies, you name it, right? Even Coca-Cola, they have a lot of tangible assets. But even in the example of Coca-Cola, some intangible assets, such as the brand, are very valuable. Maybe Coca-Cola brand is worth approximately $100 billion. The same is for Tesla. It's not worth $100 billion, but it's very valuable. It's a recognizable brand, and people like buying a Tesla just because it is a Tesla. In the case of tech companies, usually intangible assets are what more important, and even just the ones that exist. A lot of tech companies don't have a lot of tangible assets. So examples are patents. So when you're buying a Tesla, there will be a lot of patents related, for example, to the battery system. There will be a software which drives the car and the self-driving. And this is very valuable, but is an intangible asset. Other types of intangible assets, again, will be very valuable. Human resources or trained workforce is very relevant for these tech companies that are driven by software engineers. Another example of intangible assets, which are not mentioned in this slide, but that are very relevant in today's economies, is network economies. So network economies are very valuable, especially for social networks. You have Facebook, Snapchat, WhatsApp, Instagram, or Salesforce. So what are network economies? Network economies means that your company will be valuable if everyone is working with you and is in the network. Think about Facebook. You use Facebook or WhatsApp because everyone else uses it. If you would be the only one on Facebook or WhatsApp, why would you be there? And so by the fact that everyone is there, the value that you're giving to your users and the value of your company will increase because there are network economies. Network economies are very strong nowadays, and it's very hard to compete with an established network. Think about Facebook, even Google tried to create a new social network and failed. Because again, you need to convince 1-2 billion people to come at the same time. So network economies are a very strong case. An example outside of social network is Salesforce. So for example, a lot of companies now are using Salesforce to connect their invoices and their customers with the invoices. And in some cases, even the government is connecting with the companies through Salesforce to communicate revenues and pay taxes. So if you're creating a new company to compete with Salesforce, it will be very hard to convince everyone at the same time to move to your platform. And so this makes Salesforce, as well as the other social network, a very valuable company. In the case of young companies, human capital is very important. So in this slide, you can see Elon Musk dancing in China. Obviously, Elon Musk is a very prominent entrepreneur. You can see other cases such as Zuckerberg or Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. These were very successful entrepreneurs, and they received more funding because they were running these companies. In an early stage company, the entrepreneur has a strong impact, strong power in decision making, and so having a good entrepreneur with skills and experience will make your company more successful. All these can also be summarized in something called acquisition value. So most of the early stage startups that receive, especially those that receive external investments from business angels or venture capital, will need to be sold to either another company through M&A or maybe on a stock market through an IPO. In the case your company might be valuable to other acquirers, the value might change depending on the acquirer. So in this example, looking at Instagram, Instagram was acquired by Facebook in 2012. At that time, so 8 years ago approximately, Instagram only had 50 million users. Within a few years, it went from 50 million to 1 billion users. Of course, this is because Facebook managed to integrate all their networks, all their system, and so push Instagram to be more successful. So Instagram was more valuable to Facebook compared to another company, because of course Facebook is a social network and had the power and the skills to make Instagram more valuable. To give you some more background, in 2012, Instagram probably had no revenues or very little revenues. And today has $7 billion a quarter in revenues and represent 30% of the revenues of Facebook. It was initially acquired for $1 billion and now is estimated to be worth at least $50 billion. Again, the acquisition value is how your company can be valuable to someone else. Facebook also acquired WhatsApp, I think for $16 to $18 billion. Again, at that time, I think WhatsApp had 30 employees and no revenues. So why would someone pay so many $1 billion? Again, Facebook had some synergies. They could extract value out of WhatsApp, for example, by giving data to advertisers, and so it was valuable to them more than to others. So the acquisition value is the value that depends on who might be interested in your company. So to summarize, where does the value of young companies come from? What drives the value of them? Most of the time is an interconnection, is a combination of different factors. but I've given some examples. A future cash flow of Amazon or Snapchat or Tesla. It can be the valuable of intangible assets in the case of Facebook network economies, or acquisition value. In this case, we could look at Snapchat or Instagram. Human capital usually is common across companies. You have examples of Tesla, Elon Musk, Amazon, Jeff Bezos, or Facebook Zuckerberg, and generally intangible assets. Again, most companies will have a combination of these, but this is where most of the value comes from. And with this slide, we conclude today's topic. Thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to the next topic, will be source of capital, business angels, and venture capital. Thank you very much for your attention.